how this monster with 800 eyes all over its body got tricked by humans. A few minutes ago, with Jim's rebuke, a sticky creature covered in eyeballs suddenly appeared. The Lord of Gluttony's unreasonable behavior this time clearly indicated his attitude for this journey. Since the other party has already torn off the mask and come knocking on the door, Jim will no longer be polite. He waved his big hand. The mage who had been lurking for a long time suddenly appeared. He cast a freezing spell. The temperature in the hall plummeted instantly. Several giant serpents made of ice spikes suddenly rose from the ground, facing off against the Lord of Gluttony at a distance. During this time, Jim has been secretly observing the Lord of Gluttony on the side. He couldn't help but murmur in his heart, because he could feel it. The Lord of Gluttony seems not to be afraid of ice magic. He even became more excited after seeing the ice snake. He appeared more like he couldn't wait to launch an attack. Is the weakness of the Lord of Gluttony not as Domi had described? At this moment, he couldn't help but feel annoyed at his carelessness for attracting such a troublesome opponent. But right now, he can't care about much. After all, the labyrinth core is right behind him. He made a decision in his heart to believe in Domi and decided to take a chance. He ordered the mage team to increase the output of magic power. At the same time, he triggered the parasitic form and activated the harden skill. Feeling unsatisfied, he immediately instructed the mage to enchant his tentacles, transforming them into a shape resembling sharp and tough blades. At the same time, the Lord of Gluttony also took action. Just as a moment ago, its splayed-out body suddenly contracted into a ball, as if preparing to tighten its core and unleash its power. It seems like it has encountered a tough opponent today. Jim immediately changed his strategy. He ordered the mage team to cooperate and use their combined skills. He plans to deliver a fatal blow to the Lord of Gluttony. The magic attack is about to hit the Lord of Gluttony. In the twinkling of an eye, the Lord of Gluttony, who had already transformed into a human form, angrily slammed his knees to the ground. The terrifying power instantly shattered the ground, sending countless flying debris into the air. They shot towards the ice snake rushing towards him. In an instant, the flying debris smashed the ice snake into scattered fragments. Accompanying this was an apology of, "I'm sorry, please forgive me." What kind of game is this? Jim was quite startled for a moment, his face full of disbelief. Watching the scene before him, tears welled up in his eyes. The person in front of him kept apologizing non-stop. This divine-level plot twist left Jim stunned for a few seconds before he regained his composure. This situation is so awkward. It feels like I'm leading a group of adults, making a little kid cry because of being bullied. After a description by the Lord of Gluttony, Jim also had a general understanding of the whole story. His name is indeed Joseph, the Lord of Gluttony. After receiving Jim's threat, he immediately rushed over to apologize. I don't know how he understood it at that time. He even thought he was being invited into the hall by Domi. Unexpectedly, Jim started yelling and scolding at him as soon as he arrived, which scared him so much that his liver and gallbladder almost burst. Although he immediately begged for mercy and apologized at that time. However, due to the panic, he forgot that in his mucus form, he had no vocal cords. So all the apologies just now were actually just his inner monologue. When he tried to curl up and escape, the whole corridor was already frozen by magic. Fortunately, he turned into human form in that moment of life and death. He cried out the words, "I'm sorry." When it comes to this, Jim still has doubts about him. Jim questioned him about sending Gluttony troops to monitor the Garo Labyrinth's movements. How should he explain this? Unexpectedly, this event has become even more confusing. The Lord of Gluttony's original intention was indeed to congratulate the leader of Garo on becoming a noble. But he has never had any experience in giving gifts, and he has never interacted with other labyrinths before. He then ordered the Gluttony soldier to go and find out Jim's preferences. Who would have thought that his clever plan almost backfired and nearly brought disaster upon him? The bizarre reason behind all this is also what leaves Jim speechless. The kid in front of us is basically a clueless homebody who knows nothing about the world. He teased him with a suggestion, why not change the title of Gluttony to Otaku? Unexpectedly, this Lord of Gluttony couldn't make out the joke, and even said thank you instead. He then continued on his own, talking about the difficulties he had experienced along the way. It turns out that as long as he left the Gluttony Labyrinth, he had to rely on his own energy to sustain himself. He had to consume several dozen Gluttony tribe members every minute. Jim was also very curious and puzzled about this. Logically speaking, a person whose body is slowly dying should not be so calm. Lord of Gluttony sadly explained that these low-level Gluttony tribe members actually lack self-awareness. So for this visit, he brought 1 million Gluttony tribe members, which can sustain him for a month. If he had really been frozen by ice magic just now, he would have died in a very short time. This kid really is immature, revealing such deadly information. In fact, Jim is secretly relieved. He is indeed very afraid of freezing. This was evident from the brief altercation earlier. Even if the entire mage group acted at the same time, they would not be able to freeze him at once. During this time, he only needs to use his body parts that can move. By hitting the ground or the ceiling, he can unleash the overwhelming power within his body to neutralize the magic. He can then seize the opportunity to attack the labyrinth core or escape. At present, the misunderstanding between both sides can be considered resolved. Lord of Gluttony Joseph asked Jim, in a somewhat aggrieved manner, if he could release him. But Jim wanted to play tricks on him. He immediately stated that he would not accept an insincere apology from someone who came empty-handed. Jim's words instantly filled Joseph with extreme fear. He wanted to open his mouth to explain himself, but felt guilty. Just as he felt at a loss, Jim's words took a sudden turn. He promised that, as long as Joseph was willing to become his first knight and serve him, he would always be there. He would then accept the apology and forgive his mistakes. Joseph was stunned at the words, his face full of disbelief. This made Jim, who originally thought he would have to argue a lot, overjoyed. He immediately exaggerated the benefits of becoming a knight. At least, he didn't have to worry about dying from ice magic. And becoming the first knight of the nobles would be a revered figure. Jim's move made Domi a little disapproving. However, listening to his description, Joseph got even more excited. His mind couldn't help but imagine himself wearing armor, appearing mighty and awe-inspiring. He immediately agreed, afraid that Jim might change his mind. And thus, the two of them signed the master-servant contract in front of everyone's witnesses. The contract requires Joseph to unconditionally protect Jim and his Garo labyrinth. And he is required to regularly hand over half of the total income of the Gluttony Labyrinth to Jim in the form of gems. And Jim does not need to pay anything. In this way, the terrifying Lord of Gluttony on the underground 9th floor has become Jim's top henchman. At the same time, in a certain secret chamber deep within the underground labyrinth, the black market merchants from various levels are holding a regular board meeting. But it seems that the black market merchants in charge of the first, second, and third levels are all absent. I heard they are busy joining forces with the 4th level black market merchants to resist the invasion of humans. The black market merchant in charge of managing Jim's level is now promoted to a noble. He was arranged by the organization to deliver a VIP auction ticket to Jim. The ticket in his hand caught the attention of other black market merchants because everyone knew the 9th floor is the most difficult level in the new labyrinth to survive. How can a human rise in such an environment? The 9th floor black market merchant just smiled and remained silent, because it was he who followed the requirements of the black market merchant organization. He sold Parasite to Jim. This enabled Jim to leverage the power of Parasite, allowing Garo Labyrinth to establish a foothold on the 9th floor. Looking at the ticket in his hand, he was already looking forward to this auction. Jim will do some interesting things. And this is the first auction in history to invite human noble to appear. These monsters with horns on their heads control the economic lifeline of the entire underground world. At the meeting, the black market merchant on the 9th floor received a commission from the organization. He needs to invite rising underworld king Jim to attend the annual auction 1 week later. Unexpectedly, the black market merchant is determined to complete the task. He boasted wildly without restraint. This time it is the grandest ever in history. Each item for sale is rarely seen in the underground world. Rare items. Compared to the broken and useless items he brought here before, it is like night and day. And the number of people invited to participate this time exceeded 100. They are all powerful figures in the underground world. This suddenly aroused Jim's interest, which was originally lacking. I can't believe that after the chaos of the geyser battle, so many labyrinth forces survived. Jim really wants to broaden his horizons, but he also has concerns. After all, Garo Labyrinth has just established a foothold on the 9th floor, and its foundation is still very weak. If other labyrinths take advantage of his absence to come and loot, it would be a case of losing more than gaining. Regarding this, the black market merchant made him less worried. He only saw him pull out a flag from somewhere unknown, introducing it with a proud look. As long as Jim leaves the Garo Labyrinth, he should hang this black market merchant flag. This means they will receive protection from the black market merchant organization. If there are any foolish labyrinth that start a war during this time, he will be blacklisted for restricted trading. And the black market merchant may even send troops. They will destroy the labyrinth faction that provokes war. Upon hearing this, Jim also felt secretly shocked. Although he had long known the strength of the black market merchant organization in his heart, I didn't expect them to have such confidence to make such a commitment. Jim then tentatively asked a question. With just a group of businessmen like you can also make such grandiose statements. But black market merchant was able to dispel Jim's doubts with just a sentence. Even though I know you find it hard to believe, but our black market merchant organization has indeed been operating in the underground world for hundreds of years. At this moment, Joseph also spoke up from the side, confirming that what the black market merchant said was true. He had sought refuge in the auction house to escape the destruction of the labyrinth in his earlier years. It was at this time that the black market merchant noticed the petite figure of Joseph. He was immediately frightened, surprised that this 9th floor otaku could appear in the Garo Labyrinth. He then noticed the spatial rift behind Joseph. It actually leads straight to Gluttony Labyrinth. He couldn't hide his shock on his face immediately. Unable to help himself, he asked what was going on. Jim had no intention to hide it either. He informed that the black market merchant lord of gluttony had become one of his knights. He thus gained the ability to open a portal between the two labyrinths. This information is truly shocking. The Gluttony Labyrinth was swallowed up by the Garo Labyrinth. This will create a powerful force in the world of the 9th floor. It will inevitably raise the vigilance of the surrounding labyrinths. However, Jim was indifferent. But the words of the black market merchant gave him inspiration. He immediately opened the page about Lord of Gluttony Joseph in the control system. However, he could only see the 5-level Gluttony Labyrinth under Joseph's control, but he did not have the authority to control the Gluttony Labyrinth. This result disappointed him somewhat. It seems that the master-servant contract can only constrain the individual Joseph. After the black market merchant recovers from the information in front of him, he once again steered the conversation back to the upcoming auction, indicating that if Jim was willing to attend the auction, with this VIP ticket, he would enjoy a private and undisturbed box. Inside, you can enjoy complimentary food suitable for a noble taste. And there are dedicated staff to provide suitable services for the auction. Speaking of this, Jim has actually already made up his mind to attend. But then, he suddenly thought of the biggest potential threat in his mind at the moment. He then asked if the black market merchant master of the undead would also be invited to go. The black market merchant naturally understood the meaning behind Jim's words. But he simply said that the master of the undead attends every year. And he always makes a move, buying a few living creatures to take back for experiments. The black market merchant, however, did not say a word about any other personal information regarding the master of the undead. Unable to obtain the information he wanted, Jim lost interest in dealing with the black market merchant and accepted the ticket, indicating that he would keep the appointment as scheduled. Considering that Jim was a first-time participant, the black market merchant did not forget to explain how to use the ticket before leaving. That means as long as you tear open the ticket, a portal straight to the auction will appear. 1 week later, today is the day the auction will be held. Jim instructed Bo to hang up the black market merchant flag at the gatehouse first. Jim arranged for him to strengthen the patrol around the labyrinth. Pay attention to preventing the intrusion of ferocious beasts, because the master of the undead also attended the auction. The only threat to them is the fierce beasts. Domi was also asked to stay behind to ensure the smooth operation of various affairs in the labyrinth. He himself then took Lisa and Joseph with him to the auction. He tore open the ticket shining with golden light in his hand. In an instant, they arrived at the bustling auction venue. During this time, he noticed many owners of the labyrinth, who usually didn't get along well, arguing heatedly on the platform. But they were just shouting at each other to let off steam. None of them dared to cause trouble at the auction. The bunny girl by his side is his private assistant specially serving him this time. Joseph suddenly stopped Jim. Following the direction pointed by Joseph, he gazed at a solitary figure on the platform. Is this guy the master of the undead? Yes, I heard that guy emits a scent of rotting corpses. So you see, no one is willing to sit next to him. When Joseph continues to criticize the master of the undead. The auction is also kicking off at this moment. The auctioneer with long horns walked out from the back and, as usual, said some meaningless nonsense. After he set the atmosphere, he then immediately invited the first item to be auctioned off. As the auctioneer lifted the curtain, the item also revealed its true appearance. However, the originally indifferent Jim's face changed after seeing the item on the stage. He first had an expression of disbelief. To his surprise, the next second Jim's whole body was in a state of extreme agitation and disorder. At the same time, the auctioneer on the stage was trying to fetch a high price. He was eloquently introducing the auction items. The item being locked in a cage seems to be a humanoid creature. Human children are actually being bought and sold as livestock by the monsters in the underground labyrinth. Decades ago, humans carried with them thermal weapons. They waged a long and enduring war against the monsters in the underground labyrinth. And the labyrinth babies. They are the children born to the humans who entered the underground labyrinth to participate in the war. The girl who is currently locked in a cage. She is one of the labyrinth babies born in the underground labyrinth. After being captured by a monster, she was brought to an auction house to be sold at auction. But as this item appeared, there was a chorus of boos from the monsters in the audience. They seemed to have no interest in bidding on this item. The auctioneer on the stage, however, remained completely calm in this situation, because he knew that for the monsters living in the shallow layer of the labyrinth scene on the platform, humans were nothing special. So his potential clients are the monsters living in the deep layers of the labyrinth, who have never seen humans before, and the labyrinth nobles, who like to use humans as servants. The auctioneer is still on stage eloquently introducing the items up for bid. He finally stated that this labyrinth baby will start bidding at $0 because it can't speak. The atmosphere in the venue suddenly heated up as soon as he finished speaking. After all, it's not just humans who like to find bargains. Monsters are the same. The price quickly rose to 200 gems. Meanwhile, inside one of the VIP suites on the second floor, if it were not for the persuasion of Lisa and Joseph, Jim, who was extremely angry, he might have already rushed to the stage to save people. This is the territory of the black market merchant. Moreover, there are dozens of terrifying labyrinth masters on the scene. If they really start fighting, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. But Jim still couldn't let it go. Pointing to the girl on the stage, he asked, "Did Lisa say she wanted to avenge her people?" simply because they all died from the master of the undead's live experiments. However, the girl on the stage now is of my kind. Yet you advise me to sit back and do nothing. These words left Lisa stunned on the spot. She shamefully turned her head away. At this time, the bunny girl who had been silently watching everything on the side spoke up to awaken them. Several people immediately realized bidding participation may indeed be a good idea. But what is unexpected is after several rounds of bidding, the price has already risen to 1,200 gems. Sure enough, the highest bid was called out by the master of the undead. Jim immediately bid 1,300 gems to participate in the auction. Because of this bid, it was shouted out from the second floor noble box. Immediately caught the attention of the auctioneer. He immediately used a provocative tone, teasing that the master of the undead on the stage was having bad luck. There was even a venerable noble who was interested in this labyrinth baby. The master of the undead seems to have been angered by his words. He arrogantly extended his withered 5 fingers, indicating the price is 1,500 gems. This refusal to compromise made the monsters watching the scene think he must have been sleeping in the coffin for too long and gone crazy. He dared to touch the items coveted by the nobles. He is already undead. It seems like he wants to die again. As expected, as everyone guessed, a terrifying and violent pressure gushed out from the second floor compartment and swept through the whole place. Immediately scared all the bystanders into a cold sweat. However, this pressure quickly dissipated without a trace. It seems its appearance only serves as a warning to those who dare to underestimate the authority of the nobles. In the calm second floor private room, a faint bid of 1,600 gems was heard. The auctioneer immediately became excited and began bidding again. It's unclear whether it was intentional or unintentional during the process. He reminded that once the item is auctioned off, he will not be responsible for what happens afterwards. At this point, the master of the undead was trembling all over. It was unclear whether he was scared or holding back. He did not continue to bid or compete. After 3 rounds of bidding, the final price for 1,600 gems was successfully bid and won by Jim. At this moment, Jim's box was in a mess. In order to create an intimidating atmosphere after just dominating the venue, Jim and Joseph burst out with full momentum, almost destroying the box with their combined energy. Of course, the most speechless thing is that Bunny Girl has decided to charge Jim an additional service fee after checking out. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Jim presented her with another challenge. He wanted to see the girl immediately. Bunny Girl, however, said she was unable to help with this. The soonest would be after the auction, which would last a week, was over. Only then could the item be taken away. But she can use her authority to allow Jim to privately view the items after today's auction ends. Seeing this, Jim had no choice but to wait patiently. The following items up for auction are indeed some rather rare pieces. Creatures collected by elves during their decline. There are also some velvet gem and luxury items imbued with special abilities. There are even human weapons left behind in the underground labyrinth. The final highlight of the auction is even more unusual: a vampire. The vampire is rare because it has always been controlled by the nobles in the deep underground layers. The vampire in front of us is extremely rare because of the thinness of the true blood within its body. He was only taken out for auction by a noble. Despite that, this auction item still has a special additional condition. That is, if the person who wins the bid is not recognized by this vampire, it means the transaction is invalid. The auction house will give a full refund and take back the item, and then put it up for auction again the next day. It is because the original master of the vampire is a noble whom even the auction house is unwilling to offend, so they made a special exception for this item open for him. The additional condition immediately caused dissatisfaction among the monsters in the audience. They criticized the auction house for imposing unreasonable additional conditions one after another. But the auctioneer subtly pointed out that the item was sent by a noble from the deepest level of the underground labyrinth. If anyone has any objections, they can go directly to the black market merchant. But if your actions offend the noble, it won't be good. As soon as this statement was made, the audience below immediately quieted down. Everyone sat still as if they were obedient like babies. And the appearance of the vampire made Jim recall a past event. He then described to Lisa about his encounter with a group of creatures in the depths of the labyrinth that would knock people down and suck their blood. But how come they look different from the vampire on the stage? Lisa really lives up to her reputation as a knowledgeable mercenary. She immediately guessed what Jim encountered at that time. A common undead. Most of those undead are creatures without self-awareness. Vampires on stage are much more advanced compared to the undead. It is said that vampires can even bestow eternal life upon their masters. So the nobles in the deep underground are extremely interested in vampires. Despite listening to Lisa's recount, Jim remains uninterested. Firstly, just heard that the blood of this vampire has been diluted. It is estimated that it no longer has the ability to bestow eternal life upon its master. Secondly, since he currently has no shortage of a savior by his side, he has once again become a bystander. Of course, there are many monsters who don't see it that way. Who can resist the temptation of eternal life? Even weak-blooded vampires. But there are still many monsters willing to spend money to buy them back and give it a try. Soon, the vampire on the stage was auctioned off at a price of 23,000 gems. However, a dramatic scene unfolded. The vampire actually looked down on the buyer, waving his hand to refuse becoming their servant. Unexpectedly, the identity of the buyer was also extraordinary. He was the overlord ruling the 6th level of the labyrinth. Feeling offended by the unreasonable rejection, he immediately made a move. Just as he raised his hand, a ball of energy had already formed and was about to be thrown out. Who would have thought that the auctioneer's movement was faster with a casual wave of his hand? In an instant, a terrifying blaze engulfed and incinerated the Dominion Lord on the 6th floor. No one would have expected that the auctioneer from the Black Market Merchant Organization also possessed such terrifying power. The incinerated overlord only left behind this top-grade gem. This immediately made the auctioneer ecstatic, who announced on the spot that this gem will participate in tomorrow's auction. Several hours later, Jim was finally taken to the room where the girl was being held. This was their first meeting. The man is at the auction of monster. He spent a fortune to buy a speechless girl. Afterward, accompanied by Bunny Girl, he arrived at the room where the girl was detained. At the moment the door opened. In the light of the corridor, Jim saw the small figure huddled in the darkness. To avoid startling her, Jim quickly crouched down. He then asked the girl's name in the gentlest tone possible. The girl just stared blankly at him without uttering a word. Seeing this, Jim asked the girl softly once again, "Which lord do you serve in the labyrinth you come from?" The girl remained silent as before. Although her eyes were on him, her gaze was unfocused. After thinking for a moment, Jim sternly informed the girl in a commanding tone that he is her new master and she must now serve him. As soon as the words fell, the girl's body first froze. Then she slowly bent down and knelt, which made Jim's heart skip a beat. It seems that the girl's situation is far worse than he had expected. She must have been suffering for a long time, degraded into a thoughtless puppet. He originally intended to take the girl back to Garo Labyrinth to be taken care of by Domi. Of course, Jim also considered taking her back to the human world. But the girl neither speaks nor has self-awareness. She could easily be taken advantage of by families only looking to receive adoption subsidies, and she may end up being abused or abandoned. He immediately decided to personally take care of the girl from then on. Immediately, he used a commanding tone and ordered the girl to stay in the room and behave herself. He will come back in a week to take her away. Jim immediately walked out with a gloomy face and confronted Bunny Girl. He criticized the services provided by the Black Market Merchant Organization that he was very dissatisfied with. He took the opportunity to request them to provide a girl with a clean room and sufficient food. And they have to heal the girl's wounds. However, his request seemed unreasonable in Bunny Girl's eyes. He didn't need to go to such great lengths for a labyrinth baby. Little did she know that her words had touched Jim's sore spot. He turned around and sternly reprimanded Bunny Girl to take back her words, because he too was a labyrinth baby. At this moment, the uncontrollable parasitic mode climbed all over his body, preparing for battle. Bunny Girl then realized her mistake. She immediately apologized and promised to do her best to arrange things according to his requests, which finally calmed Jim's anger. But he was also worried that Bunny Girl might go back on her word afterwards. As he left, he dropped a hint to Bunny Girl through words. Ask her to take good care. He will come regularly to check on the girl's situation. In the blink of an eye, Jim has been in the auction house for 7 days. Except for the first day, when he attended the auction, he spent most of the rest of the time in the room. Fortunately, the food and accommodation provided by the Black Market Merchant Organization are good. This makes the whole group feel very comfortable and at ease. During their leisure time, Jim chatted with Lisa. He learned a lot about Elf. After the fall of the Elf tribe, Lisa gathered the remaining tribe members and formed a mercenary guild. They quickly gained a reputation in the underground world for their strength as elves, rising in fame with their formidable combat abilities. Their actions also caught the attention of the Master of the Undead. This guy is obsessed with conducting crazy live experiments on various creatures. And elves themselves are delicate and rare species. This set a trap to catch the elf tribe. Lisa is the only elf who escaped the trap. Therefore, over these years, she has always wanted to seek revenge for her people. But she also knows that revenge is impossible by herself alone. Therefore, she attached herself to the giant dragon labyrinth, waiting for an opportunity to provoke a war between the Flood Dragon King and the Master of the Undead. Having understood the ins and outs of the matter, Jim also expressed his intention to keep his promise to help her seek revenge. Upon hearing this, Lisa was immediately filled with gratitude. Actually, even without this matter involving Lisa, solely based on the Master of the Undead's indiscriminate killing, Jim wouldn't let him off either. Later, Jim asked Joseph about the girl's situation. Joseph immediately pretended to start exerting force. He shared Gluttony's perspective by staying on the girl's side. He could see the girl still the same as before. She knelt in the corner with a blank expression on her face. Even when food was brought to her, she remained indifferent. Instructions must be given in a commanding tone. Only then will she make a move. Jim could only helplessly scratch his head at the words. Fortunately, after today they can return home. At this moment, the intercom in the room made a sound. It's a message from the Black Market Merchant Organization asking all guests to gather at the auction venue. I estimate that they are going to hold a closing ceremony or something. So a few people came to the auction venue with a sense of boredom. Returning to the auction venue again, they were once again introduced to many good items. But Jim only brought a total of 8,000 gems, which is really too few. Because as long as it's a good thing, the price will quickly rise to tens of thousands of gems. This is also the reason why he has been staying in the room and not going out these days. I stayed to watch the final highlight of today, still the female vampire. Jim couldn't help but be surprised. He then curiously asked Bunny Girl before finding out. Female vampire has been consistently bought by buyers at high prices in these few days. But she keeps refusing to become the buyer's servant. Why does this female vampire feel like she's deliberately on stage to mock these participants who are bidding? At this moment, the auctioneer is still awkwardly and enthusiastically introducing the female vampire. The audience below obediently listens. The scene is both strange and funny. But this time, it seems there is a change. I saw female vampire holding her breath and concentrating. She shattered the shackles on her body with a single blow. Immediately, a bloody mist appeared out of thin air and enveloped her. After the blood mist dissipated, there emerged a woman with golden waves of hair. Her coquettish appearance, hiding behind the fan, is indeed desirable and sweet. The auctioneer then emerged from the side, claiming that this time, the master will be chosen by female vampire herself. As long as you are selected, the price is arbitrary. Even if you don't pay, it's okay. As soon as the words fell, female vampire couldn't wait to spread her wings and fly up. As she flew in that direction, the audience in the stands couldn't help but let out a gasp. The location where the female vampire stopped was the VIP box that had previously emanated a terrifying aura. If they could see her at this moment, they would be even more shocked by the female vampire's expression. Just saw female vampire's cheeks flushed with excitement. At the same time, saliva kept overflowing. It seems that she was still murmuring about a very sweet taste in her mouth.